So there's a number of different approaches to this content. So the digital literacy content has been around for some time, and it's available both offline and online. And I want to be very clear that this content that I'm showing you right now is outside of the context of education. So this is really good content for those of you who may be in a more developing market, or maybe working with teachers who have not grown up with technology and are more uncomfortable with it. So they can use it either online or offline. There's 5 different courses in the standard curriculum, including computer basics, which is, being able to identify the bits and pieces of a computer, the internet, productivity programs, computer security and privacy, and digital lifestyles, which is really about how you engage with social media in a safer way. And the thing that's really interesting about this curriculum is each one of those courses has an assessment. And so what I did was I actually took this first course in the digital literacy assessment, and I actually tried to pass, and I got some wrong. The areas that I got wrong were around keyboard shortcuts, and so you can see that it's recommending, based on my learning plan, that I need a bit more work around using different techniques for using my mouse, as well as keyboarding. And it allows me to print my results. So as a trainer, you could see this could be very helpful, because the teacher could take the self-assessment and then bring you the results of their learning, and then you could structure something that's specific to their needs. Now, from that learning report, I'm able to actually go directly into the units of study that correspond to what I need in that e-learning around the introduction to computers, using different groups of keys, as well as performing tasks using my mouse. Now, what Partners in Learning has done is they've taken that digital literacy curriculum, and we've said, that's a great foundation. It is outside the context of education. So once teachers have that baseline level of competency with productivity tools, using the internet, kind of the basics of computer, what we have here is a curriculum, and you'll find this in the PILTrainer.com portal if you do decide to become a Partners in Learning trainer, and you'll have access to this amazing content. So we've broken down these consolidation activities into different levels: access, manage, integrate, evaluate, create, and communicate. And each one of these areas has a kind of mini workshop or mini program of study that you could use for coaching your teachers on how they can actually apply these skills in the classroom with their students. And so there's a lesson plan mapped out time-wise, and so you'll know exactly what you need to do and exactly the time it's going to take, and have all of those resources to help teachers embed their learning into the classroom. So the place on the competency framework that really falls is the level 100 digital literacy, but with the consolidation activities found in PILTrainer.com, it's reaching up into the technology literacy level and showing how those things actually get applied in the classroom. So teaching with technology is a one-to-one mapping to the technology literacy strand of the UNESCO framework. And it's made up of 3 different components. So you see here we have a self-assessment and identifying the learning gaps. We've got 5 courses and 36 hours of e-learning content, then certificates of completion, which are summative assessments. And I'm very excited today to be able to talk to you briefly about a new offering, which will be available more towards the end of this month, called the Microsoft Certified Educator Exam, which is actually a valid and reliable measurement of educator competencies as defined by the learning and assessment outcomes of the technology literacy approach in the UNESCO framework, which, by the way, is very, very similar to the ISTE-NET teacher standards, and also are very important foundational skills for anybody in the U.S. who is needing to adopt the course standards, because in the course standards, the integration of technology and the use of technology in teaching and learning is really important. So this would be a great foundation for those teachers as well. What I'm going to do now is very quickly just walk you through an experience of this curriculum. So the first thing you could have your learners do is create their own learning plan. It takes about 45 minutes to take this assessment, this self-assessment, and at the end, you can see here on the right, what you get is a recommended, further learning recommended, or further learning optional. And this is in the language, again, of the teacher competencies. So you can see here, given a curriculum goal, identify appropriate ICT resources and skills required to use ICT resources. And in this case, the learner did okay on that objective, so they can go seek more information if there's an interest. But where they really need to kind of drill down is, given a particular scenario, how do I evaluate and select an ICT instructional resource to utilize it in the classroom for that particular learning objective? And then each of those learning objectives maps specifically to a unit of study in the teaching and learning curriculum. So we have here, this is what the learning looks like. So this particular topic is about supporting and teaching and learning with ICT. For those of you in the States, the rest of the world calls technology ICT. So that's what we're referring to here. And each topic has some interactive exercises. So in this case, it's asking the learner to match kind of a traditional way of teaching with an ICT enhanced or accelerated way. And the learners drag and drop these tiles and then get immediate feedback whether they have that correct. Now, we also show examples of how to use technology. So in this case, it's talking about how technology can be used as to create tests or quiz that can allow formative assessment to happen in the classroom in more real time. And if you click on the example button in this topic, what the teacher will be able to do is walk through an example of using a PowerPoint presentation to do a formative assessment on a healthy eating unit for their third graders. And then if you go back and click on the how-to button, what will come up is a step-by-step how-to for embedding action buttons into a PowerPoint presentation. So as you can see, what we're really trying to do is lead with the pedagogy, lead with the learning, and then embed the how-to technology underneath that. We know that all of you come from a variety of different environments and different contexts, even within the same state or the same school district. And so we've tried to give ideas for how an educator might want to structure a particular activity based on the scenario in their classroom. So in this case, in this particular topic earlier, we had looked at a case study of a one-to-one student-to-device program where students were using laptops and OneNote to collect and analyze and organize information. And so in this case, what we're doing is we're giving an example of how that same activity could be done in a scenario where there are many computers who are sharing one device. We also spent a lot of time talking to educators around the world, in fact, close to 100 of them, and asked for best practices and most common pitfalls, and we've surfaced that in these teaching with technology topics with Ask the Expert. So in this case, Ken and Soraya are talking, and Ken saying that he really had a trouble with a lesson that he was delivering with his students where he asked them to do an internet search to do some research on a project. and it took too long, and the results the students got back he wasn't pleased with. And so Zariah is kind of coaching him here through this little animation about how he might want to structure that lesson next time in order to get better results. So each topic actually ends with a summary of their learning, which is a great way for anybody who wants to study and sit for the certification exam to kind of print out and be able to study before taking that exam. And so that brings us to the Microsoft Certified Educator exam, which probably a lot of you are familiar with other Microsoft certifications like the Microsoft Office Specialist certification or the Microsoft certifications around database or network management for those of you who I saw are actual computer teachers. This is actually a certification for educators that will be a valid and reliable assessment that they've achieved those competencies as outlined in the UNESCO framework at the technology literacy approach. And what's really important to understand is this does not measure technology skills. So having someone pass this exam does not mean they know how to use a particular technology like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. What it means is that they are able to actually understand what tool and how they might want to apply technology in order to meet the student learning objectives or in order to make themselves more productive as an educator. So in theory, this is really a technology neutral exam, meaning someone who has studied all of these competencies who may not be using complete only Microsoft tools would be able to pass this certification. And as I said, it's going to be available the end of this month via Microsoft Volume License or Certiport resellers. And so I'm sure you'll be seeing more information come out about that over time. So actually, I'm going to pause here. You can see where the curriculum, teaching with technology, and the optional certification kind of falls within the competency framework. And while it covers one-to-one the technology literacy competencies, it absolutely kind of foreshadows and surfaces what is possible, even if a teacher might not be at that particular stage. So it really does start going into the knowledge deepening and envisioning how you can really create rich, individualized learning scenarios for your students. So let me stop here and see, are there any particular questions either on the digital literacy or the teaching with technology before I move on to level 300?
Tracy, it's Adrian here. There was a question in the Q&A pane about certification and how teachers who are already using TWT content, teaching with technology content, how they might be able to move towards certification.
That's a really great question. So what you'll see over the coming weeks is more specific information about how, if you want to be certified, if you want to take the actual certification test, where and how you'll be able to do that. And basically it'll be at a Certiport testing center unless your school or district or state, or in some cases, as we're seeing, countries are interested in doing this in a much more broad way. And then there will be testing centers that can be set up at a school site or at a training center via volume license, campus license. I do want to say something interesting about that as well. You know that as part of the curriculum, you take summative assessments at the end of each chapter or each course, which is really, it's very valuable and kind of a good indicator that you may be able to pass the certification. But what we are seeing is the certification is a very rigorous exam. We've piloted it in Russia as well as Ireland. And I think many teachers went in thinking that this was going to be easy to pass. And anybody who has tried to become certified in one of the Microsoft, productivity suite tools knows that those certification exams are very challenging. And so that is the case with this certification as well. It will be a challenging exam, and we will make sure to communicate when specifically it's available, and how an individual teacher might be able to sit for that exam if they desire.
And there was a question as well about languages, Tracy, and what languages the teaching with technology content was available in.
That's a really good question. So there's 2 languages for the Teaching with Technology curriculum and certification exam right now. They are English and Russian. We have many more other countries interested at, the Ministry of Education level. We're hoping next year, can't promise, but hoping next year that we will add Spanish and Portuguese to that language, and possibly French. And what I would encourage you to do, especially if you're in a position of influence in your school or district or state level, is to work with your local Microsoft Partners in Learning contact to figure out what might be the options for localization in your areas. The digital literacy curriculum that's on the Microsoft.com site is available in many, many more languages, and you can go and see what those languages are. So Teaching with Technology is pretty new, and we're getting a lot of great momentum and interest behind it, but it is slow with regards to being able to localize it. And how about one more question, and then we can move on, and I will continue to stay on afterwards and answer additional ones.
Yes, so another good question here would be the link between this certification that you're discussing and IT Academy.
That's a great question, too. So IT Academy, anybody who has an IT Academy subscription will actually be able to take up to 10 Microsoft Certified Educator exams as well. So for those of you who have an IT Academy membership, you'll know right now there is, you can take 20 MTA exams as part of that membership package, and we'll be adding MCE to it, so it will be kind of 10, 10, and 10. 10 MOS exams, 10 MTA exams, and 10 Microsoft Certified Educator exams. And the Teaching with Technology curriculum in English is also available on the IT Academy e-learning site. Okay,
just
so
one last quick one, if you have, Tracy, just about offline availability. Is any of this content available offline?
The digital literacy content is available offline, and we're looking at summer to fall to be able to offer an offline experience for the Teaching with Technology curriculum. But right now it is available online only. Okay, so now let's talk about, we have these great consolidation activities. So again, as those of you who are trainers and wondering, well, geez, can I just send my teachers up to that e-learning site and set them loose and have them, magically come back with great integration skills? And the answer is no. So the research around adult learning and development and e-learning specifically is really that e-learning on its own is not very effective. In the same way that you saw in the slide that Adrian talked you through, just only doing training in kind of a one-to-many, standing at the front of the room lecture model is also not very effective. So looking at the e-learning curriculum and using it in a blended model with learners is going to be the most effective approach. So you can blend that learning, and then going to the resources that are on PillTrainer.com, we have a number of different consolidation activities that would then help you work more directly with your learners to apply what they've learned from the e-learning into the classroom. And so we have kind of 3 different sets of consolidation activities, including using technology for teaching and learning, using technology for assessment, and using technology to engage in communities of practice. And so that's going to be really helpful in actually moving your teachers along until they start actually doing it in the classroom. It's not going to embed their learning.